Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Upside Swings NBA Draft Podcast, the podcast, the highest ceiling. And this is truthfully the final pod of this cycle, however you want to word this, the wrap up where we're discussing the NBA draft and giving some grades. I want to say that we're not really super deep in our grades. We're just like the American public college system. Like we don't really kind of pay that much attention. I like to say a C is average, but then sometimes I feel mean giving a C. So you just never know. But I think it's always a fun exercise. It's good to go back and wrap up and kind of have a nice little stop point before we start doing off-season content, of which there will be more this year. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit at the end of the podcast. But this was a really fun cycle. Like always at the end, I got a little tired. I'm still a little tired, but I've had a blast and I had a really fun time kind of watching it unfold too. Coop, tell me a little bit about how you're doing, and then tell me a little bit about how you kind of felt in the moment on draft day, like overall impressions of how the draft went.
I'm doing pretty well. you know, glad the draft's over and we're able to move forward. It's always hard that last week because you're just so excited about it. But I thought the draft actually went really well. I thought most teams did pretty well for the most part. Especially with so much of the middle group of guys, falling out with NIL. I think a lot of teams just did really well in the draft, made reasonable picks, brought in decent players. For the most part, we'll talk about some reaches, but almost none of them are going to be, this is an absurd reach like there have been in years past. I feel like a lot of the reaches were more like, I get it, you like your guy, go get your guy. I do think that teams have gotten better at drafting. And I do think that that's something that we'll talk about here in this one. Are you ready to hop in with the Wizards here?
Well, so I do want to hold on that point for a second. Someone tweeted, a study that was just kind of showing just how much better teams have gotten at drafting. And I think it shows, and some of this, it's tied in with the NIL thing, but there were only like two players with a first round grade for me, maybe a couple more that fell into the second round. It was basically Isaiah Evans, and that might have been it. Like the NBA is just, and some of this is, as you get older, maybe you move more towards consensus too. And Coop and I are reaching UNC status. We're officially in our mid-20s, Coop. We're getting old, and so I do think that's part of it. But also, I think that the NBA is caught up with, analytics is kind of even the playing field. Every team has an analytics department anymore. It's not just forward-thinking teams, and even guys I'm lower on than most, like I'm not as low on as I both was in the past, but also, as bad as I think they were. Like Darius Acuff for like the shot chucking guard that I'm low on is way better than some of the shot chucking guards that have been drafted in the top 10, a decade ago. Right. It's it has gotten way better. There's a lot less just like complete nonsense. But basically every pick in this draft, aside from one, I would say I can squint and say, okay, yeah, I get it. I might not have done that. I might not agree, but I get it. I get where it comes from. I get the thought process. That's not to say that there won't be bust. There will be. It's not to say that there weren't some reaches. There were. But I do think that overall the NBA has moved towards, a little bit of equilibrium in terms of the competence in which front offices operate. But yeah, let's jump right into it, especially because this can be a long pod. At number one overall, the Washington Wizards selected AJ Debonsa at 46. They drafted Felix Okpara. I have not yet seen if he's signing a full contract or a two-way. We'll discuss him briefly. Neither of us did a full scout, but let's talk about AJ. AJ at one. I mean, obviously, this has been a discussion for us for a while. We both had him at 3 on our board in I had him in a tier below Cam and Darren. Did you have him in the same tier as Darren Coop? I can't quite remember.
He was a tier below.
Okay.
I did like AJ DeBonsa a lot. I had him at 4 on my board, but with a guy like Boozer, on my board who was very nearly generational, someone like Darren Peterson, who I really believe a lot in. It's hard to give anything above like a B here for the Wizards. I think, you could have done a lot worse, but also like if you're not taking the best player on the board, that's kind of a whiff. I think Akpara's fine. He's huge. He's like played a lot of minutes. He's, an older, huge big. He can do his job. I think that's a fine pick at 46, especially for a team that kind of needs just like serious basketball players. And I do think Akpara is one of those. I think my final grade will be a B. I don't feel great about it, but this isn't Anthony Bennett. This isn't Zachary Rees-Haché. This is still a guy who does have super high upside to be one of the 2 or 3 or even 1 best players in the class, right? He's still got this crazy scoring bag, even if I don't think his ceiling or his floor is as high as someone like Boozer or Peterson. So I'm going to try to do grades this whole time. I'm going to try to be basic and keep track of my grades.
Okay, that's fair. You can. Oh, did I not give you editor access? I was gonna say here. I'll make sure you can edit that. And then
Thank you.
You can have it forever. I'm gonna go a little bit lower. I'm gonna say a C. And what I mean by C, like I said, to me that's average. I think AJ is going to be like an average to slightly below number 1 overall pick. He's gonna be in the different type, but in like the Andrew Wiggins realm of number 1 picks rather than the, obviously LeBron and Wemby are kind of their own thing, but, below that kind of threshold. I've mentioned this a couple of times, but I don't see the top end star upside. I also truthfully just hate AJ on the Wizards. Like to the extent that I almost want to drop it to a C-. I won't. But I kind of do. I kind of want to because I'm like, if you're going to have Trae Young and Anthony Davis and you're going to try to be like competent, why are you taking a young guy who needs the, at least some type of ball handling responsibility? And so far in his career, Trae Young has not shown the ability to play with someone else who has the ball, like at all. If he's on the floor, Trae Young has the ball. He couldn't play with DeJounte Murray. He couldn't really play in the correct way with Jalen Johnson. There's a reason Jalen Johnson blew up basically right as he left. Like, I just hate this for AJ. I hate it for his development. There's a part of me that's like, oh, it'd be good for him to have to play some off ball. I think that's important development, but not with someone like Trae Young. More with someone like, I even think like if he was on the now Timberwolves with LaMelo Ball, I'd be like, okay, like that's more of like a real off ball role. The type of off ball role that I think the Grizzlies could have maybe put him in, where it's like he has a lot of responsibility, but maybe he doesn't have to do everything. But this is too far on the other extreme. And so I couldn't get super excited for it. Quickly on Okpara, like I did not get to do a full scout on Felix Okpara, sadly. But I do like Felix Okpara from what I was able to see. Like I thought he was a really like cool, fun defensive player. I would not be at all shocked if he sticks in the league for what that's worth. My strong suspicion was if I had gotten to him that he would have been a full contract second rounder for me. I don't know if he's signing a full contract or a 2-way at 46. That's kind of, and he's old, so it'll probably end up being a 2-way, but I think he's a legitimately really good defensive player, like really, really good high-level defensive player who can jump. He's a very classical, like backup rim runner type. If he has like an Ed Davis level career, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I think that could absolutely happen for Felix Okpara. So I do like that pick. It doesn't necessarily raise the grade because I don't know that he's like above replacement value. And like I said, the AJ pick is actually maybe a little bit closer to a C- than a C+. But I'm just going to stick with a straight C here. Coop, the Jazz are easy. They took Darren Peterson and no one else. How'd you feel about the DP pick here?
I think this is an A-. I think Peterson is like, he's going to be a good second pick. I think he's the second best player in the draft, and you get that guy at 2. I think you can't go wrong with that kind of guy. I really like him in the scheme. I think he's boosted a lot by getting to come and play for Will Hardy. I think he's just boosted as a player by getting to come into a real ecosystem of a team that wants to win basketball games, and he gets to be a part of that and be like a major contributor. And I think he really can do that. He's going to get to play with guys who, they play in a scheme where he's going to get the ball in the ways that he's, really good at, which is as an off-ball scorer and shooter. And he's also going to get some on-ball reps. I'm really excited about him on the Jazz. It's not an A or an A plus because it's not Boozer, and Boozer's the best player in the class. But the Jazz are one of the few teams where it's like, I like this so much that it's almost okay, right? And I will say for my grading scale, I'm a nicer, in this case, metaphorical teacher than Bryce is. I don't think C is average. I think if you do a good job, you should get the grade you deserve. Even if it's not the best, not everyone can get 100 because that would be stupid. But if most of the class gets A's, then most of the class gets A's. I think most people will be in a B range. I think most of the picks in this class were good, not great.
That's the other thing I'll say is I could definitely be meaner and be like, well, anyone who didn't draft Ibuka Corey when he was 4 alone on my board is going to get like the highest they can get is a C. I'm not going to be that guy today. Like I'm going to be a little bit nicer than that. But I do like I like Coop said, I'm just a little bit meaner probably. But I like Darren Peterson. I've grown on this. To me, this is also an A minus. I have them in the same tier. I still would have preferred Cam Boozer. I had Cam above Darren, but I do think you can squint and make an argument that Darren is a better, could be a better player because I do think he maybe has a potentially more special individual skill, and that I think now there's a world that Boozer is the best passer in the world someday. Don't get me wrong, but I think there's a world that Darren Peterson is the best shooter in the league. And he's also like 6'5", super athlete, not super athlete, but good athlete who can also play some defense. I think what I really like about Peterson here in Utah is that I think his development pathways are pretty open. He doesn't have to be a point guard, but he still kind of could be because Keontae George is only kind of a point guard. I think he'll be able to be kind of a second side creator and an off ball screener. His intelligence is going to pop a little bit more in like the 0.5 second stuff that Will Hardy likes to do. I just think he's going to be real. Like I actually think Coop, and I don't want to stamp this too early or anything, but Darren Peterson is probably my early pick for Rookie of the Year. We will have a like rookie discussion, but I think this is like the perfect place for him to just succeed early, and that if he shoots the way I think he's going to shoot, like he will just get a lot of open shots, and Will Hardy is going to scheme him really well, and I think he's smart enough to do it, and he's actually like probably already a better defensive player than Keontae George, so like there's a world that he might even close some games. Like my strong suspicion is that the starting lineup is Keontae George, Darren Peterson, Lowry, Triple J, and Walker Kessler, and then there's even like an outsized chance that Kessler's not back, and so which I actually think would be better for Darren if Kessler isn't around. Don't get me started on Walker Kessler, but anyways, so I've really grown on this. I think Darren Peterson is going to be like an All NBA caliber player. I think he could absolutely have like a Donovan Mitchell level career, which for some Jazz fans is going to give PTSD flashbacks, but he even has a more special top end skill than Mitchell had. And I really enjoy this pick. I'm really excited to get to root for Darren in Utah. Coop, let's talk about the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies at 3 take Cam Boozer. At 21, they take Kareem Lopez. And at 32, they take Richie Saunders. Let's focus purely on Cam right now before we get into like the whole draft and even like the whole grade. Why was Cam the best player in this draft, and why? Like, how do you feel about his fit here in Memphis?
He's probably the best offensive player we've ever scouted. Like, plain and simple. I think he really is dominant on the offensive end. He rebounds. He's an insane playmaker. one of the, 2 or 3 best we've scouted in our time. Extremely strong, extremely efficient, can stretch the floor a little bit, can score on the inside, puts pressure on the defense, super smart, super quick processor. I think of him almost as like a Tyrese Halliburton if he was, a 6'10" shredded man. I think Cam Boozer's incredible. Multiple special skills. I think the defense is better than people talk about it being. He's incredibly good. Number one player on my board by a huge margin. Best player in the class. I think I have to give him an A+ off that alone. We'll talk about the other two here in a second, but Boozer is the kind of player who fundamentally changes how a team can and will approach the game. I think he's game breaking, game changing in so many ways. So he's awesome.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to see how they use him. Last year, so 2 years ago, they kind of went away from like a pick and roll heavy scheme. And then last year, in some ways, maybe to appease John Morant, they kind of went back to more pick and roll heavy scheme. And I just wonder how that's going to work with Boozer, who I think is going to be, better utilized in heavy ball movement type schemes. But I could see him, pick and pop, high lows, running some ball screen himself. Like, I do think that the best thing for him is if the Grizzlies are like, Boozer is all that matters right now, and we're just we're gonna change whatever it is we do to maximize him. I do imagine he'll play the 4 with Jalen Wells and Cedric Coward at the 2 and 3. Cam Spencer could play some 2. Point guard. I mentioned that I tweeted this. I was like, I still believe in Wendell Carter Jr. or not Wendell Carter Jr. Well, what's his name? I'm getting him mixed up. The other Walter Clayton Jr., the other WCJ. Zach Edey, I think that's an interesting kind of, frontline group there. I just am interested to see what works best with him, especially at that point guard spot where they have, it could be Walter Clayton, it could be Scottie Pippen, could be Cam Spencer, it could be, Ja still, right? I imagine Ja gets traded somehow, some way. I think even if they maybe have to incentivize a team to take him a little bit, I imagine the Grizzlies do. I think they're just kind of ready to be out of that business. But I think this is it's best player available, but I do still I like the fit. Not that the fit necessarily matters, but I'm interested to see how quickly it kind of develops in terms of Boozer is the prize now. Coward is fun. I don't think Coward is by any means a future superstar. Wells could be a great 3-and-D role player. Edey could be potentially maybe a lower end star. I still don't really see that, truthfully. I think, some of the rookie season BPM numbers maybe overrated him a little bit, but I still think he can be good. I think this team has plenty of talent, but I'm just interested to see how it breaks down. Kareem Lopez, I liked quite a bit. And at 16, I've seen some people say, well, this is a crowded front court room or whatever. But taking him at 21, I think that's a great pick. A lot of my guys that were ahead of him were off the board, so I can't even really fault him for not taking Quintance or a Corey. Those 2 guys were off the board. Kareem Lopez was in my next tier of guys left, and I think this was a really excellent pick. I think he is someone who can play next to Cam. He can be a backup for Cam. Even if he doesn't really hit, I think the process on this is good. You take someone who is super young and pretty productive in a pro league, who is physically strong and has translatable skills to the NBA. He's not all the way there. There's a lot of questions about what exactly he will be and who he will be. I view him as kind of a 4. That doesn't mean he couldn't slim down and be more of a 3, but he's an okay vertical athlete, even though he's a super load leaper. He's fairly smart, if not a crazy quick processor. I think he'll make shots at some point in the NBA. And he's big, and he can kind of at sometimes try defensively. That's just at 21, that's great. There's only there was literally only a handful of players in this class that are going to be 19 for the rookie season. Kareem Lopez is one of them. Cam Boozer is another. The youth matters, especially when the last couple of years the Grizzlies have, and they've hit on these guys, but they've taken older rookies. Jalen Wells and Cedric Coward are older. Walter Clayton Jr. is older. get a couple really, really young, developable rookies in. I think that's great process. And then Saunders is, I think, a fine flyer at 32. I mean, he's kind of a perfect guy to take at 32 for the Grizzlies specifically because he's basically going to have to redshirt um, as a rookie anyways, like with the injury. And this is a team that has a pretty loaded backcourt right now in terms of like the amount of guys that can play. And so, let him kind of take his time and then see. But I like his toughness. I like his grit. I think he'll make enough shots. So I'm a fan of this here. And yeah, I mean, this is an A+ draft. If there was like, we don't do this, but if there was like an S, like this is the S tier of drafts. Like this is literally as good as it gets. Where you get my number one guy at 3, you take a guy I really like at 21, and you take a guy who, well, I don't love, like I see a path for at 32. The only way this could have been better is if it was Isaiah Evans at 32 instead of Saunders. Coop, what's your final grade here? And what do you think about Kareem Lopez?
A plus 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 plus. Like you said, I do think this is the top end of drafts that we've seen. Cam Boozer's the goods. Kareem Lopez, pretty good motor. He's got an NBA body. He's got some funk. I think he can really play the 4, maybe slim down, play some 3. That's a good player. He can kind of shoot. If he can really shoot, I mean, this is a very obvious player. Good development spot for him. I think getting to play with Boozer will be really, really good for his development. And I'm really interested to see how that looks. If he's even going to play much. They do have a crowded front court, but I like that. And then get a guy who can shoot and play. And Richie Saunders, I like Saunders more than you, I think. Just like guys who can like kind of play ball at 6'6" or 6'7", always in demand. Always in demand. And the Grizzlies, even if they have a ton of them, I think he could be a huge get here for them. And I mean, easily, I think the best draft of anyone in the league. And I think we have the Bulls next here at 4.
Yeah, so the Bulls at 4 take Caleb Wilson, which was the most obvious pick in the draft. And then at 15, a little bit of surprise, they take Dalen Swain. I do just want to quickly talk about what this roster is now. This is all forwards, all passing, no shooting. This is like one of the funkiest builds of any team I've seen. Now, to be fair, Giddey shot okay last year. I think Matas is on a good development curve. Jalen Smith, if he's the starting center, can kind of shoot, right? Like there is some like low levels of shooting on this team, but this is a pretty rough shooting team. They're all transitions. So last year's draft pick, Noah Songe, the year before, Montas Buzelis, and now this year, Caleb Wilson are all kind of play finishing athletic 4s. Josh Giddey's on this team. Dalen Swain is like a playmaking 2-3 type. Maybe you can beef up a little bit and play some 4. This is just a really fascinating team. Coop, we were both lower on not Dalen Swain. We were both lower on Caleb Wilson, but this was both good. I would say good value, not elite value for Swain for me at least. Like 15, I think is perfectly fine. Kind of right around in the range I had him. I think I had him at 13. Again, would not have been my pick. Corey was still on the board, but I can see the vision with him a little bit. Sadly, as he was drafted, I immediately got horrendous Chandler Hutchison flashbacks when he got drafted by the Bulls, and I just tried to tell myself, new regime. This is hopefully not just the Bulls of old, but it's so fascinating, and you wonder, obviously, as a new regime comes in, like, is there any belief or loyalty at all in Noah Songe, or is he just completely going to be cast aside immediately? Is Matas Buzelis viewed as a future star, or is he just viewed as someone who is okay but not maybe worth super big investment? I don't know. I have so much, like, this is gonna be one of the more interesting league pass teams to watch for me, because I just like, what even is this team gonna be? But in a more frank sense, I had Caleb Wilson at 8. I was just not a fan. In the same way that a lot of people were. I like him. I think he will be a good NBA player. That's why I had him at 8. I didn't have him at 15 or 20. I was not out on him, but I just was not crazy in on him. And I just don't know how high I can get on this draft as a whole, despite kind of liking Swain. But I'll save my grade for a second. Coop, where are you kind of at with the Bulls as a whole here?
The Caleb Wilson pick is like I get you kind of have to take him, and I know a lot of people really like Wilson. I'm lower. I had him outside of my top 10. Just not in love with a lot of the things that people really love from him. I think he's very, very raw, and those really aren't the kinds of players that I want to be taking super, super high in the draft. I think he's good, um, but there were better players available, better fits available. If this is really the direction you want to go, and then Dalen Swain at 15. I like Swain. I think Swain. I think I kind of talked you up on him. I like Swain more than most. It feels like he's kind of going to the middle of nowhere to like be put down, which kind of sucks. Like, so you're either going to be like throwing a Songay and Leonard Miller like out the window, or Matas is going to lose a bunch of development times. Like Caleb Wilson is going to get his 25, 30 minutes a night because he went 4 overall. And then is Swain even going to get minutes? And it's like the part of the appeal with Swain is that he's 6'8" and can really play. And guys like that are like desperately needed all around the league. And then he gets drafted by the one team that actually has like too many of these guys to count. And I will say that if I get it. Like at some point, you just need to be taking as many swings as you can get. But if all of your swings are just going to strangle each other, like in the metaphorical womb here, you're just throwing shit into a trash can. Like, what are we doing? I think it's kind of a waste. I did have it as a C minus. I think I'm going to change my grade to a D plus. Honestly disappointed. Decent players and like 4-year pick outcomes, at 4 and 15. I think Wilson and Swain is a fine outcome, but they need a lot more than fine. The Bulls are in a very shitty position, and it feels like they're kind of overcorrecting from like, hey, let's build the plane out of guards to, hey, let's build the plane out of wings and forwards. And it's like, well, maybe instead of building a plane, you should build a basketball team. So, what's your final grade here?
I'm gonna go with a C minus. I think I'm a little bit higher on it than you. I do think Caleb Wilson will be good, and I imagine he will put up pretty big numbers his rookie season because I think they're just gonna juice the pace like crazy. Like I bet you this is a top 5 highest paced team in the league next year, and Josh Giddey is just gonna throw like a billion dimes to Caleb Wilson, who is a monster straight line athlete and vertical athlete, and I imagine Caleb Wilson will get overrated after his rookie season, especially defensively because he's going to have some big highlight moments. I could see this being very similar to Steph Castle. And truthfully, I think if we redid the 2024 draft with our mindset, I would have had Castle in a similar range that I had Wilson, where I was like, I get it, and I think it's going to, it's kind of one of those I've seen this story before type of thing. Now, he's not, obviously, he's very different from Steph Castle, but I just think he's tailor-made to like put up some numbers here, but I just think the half-court creation and the defensive inconsistencies are just too limiting. But I do like Swain, and I hope Swain can figure it out. I have some serious worries that he might just not get to see the floor in any type of advantageous way, and I'm not sure what the Bulls shooting dev is like, but the track record in recent history has not been great, and he's someone who needs real shooting development. So again, not out on this draft by any means. C minus, I think, feels fair. The Clippers at 5, they take Keaton Wagler. At 36, they take Baba Miller. At 55, they take Nick Martinelli. And then at 57, they take someone I've never heard of before, Narcisse Ngoy. So that's an oversight by me. Most of the other second rounders, I've at least, had some eyes on in some way. I have zero clue who Ngoy is. He's similar to the guy that the Knicks took last year, who just signed that contract, Diabate, right? Who am I thinking of, Coop? I can't remember the Knicks just signed him to a contract. He was on 2A all year.
Diawara.
Mo Diawara. So, he could absolutely work out. Like, the old me would have been like pounding my head into my my laptop at the idea that there was someone who was drafted who I didn't know about. I hope Ngoy has the same success Diawara has. I didn't even get to watch Diawara last year. As far as I remember, if so, it was super brief. I hope I didn't rank him. That would have been really dumb of me. So I don't know about Ngoy, but Wagler at 5, I like this pick a lot, Goop. I've been big on the Wagler train. I've heard some people say, but Darius Garland, and I'm like, who cares? Like, at a certain point, you got to just take the best guy at 5. He was not really the best guy at 5 because I had a Corey above him, but of the realistic guys, to me, this was the best guy at 5. And I think he can play with Darius Garland. I think he could play behind Darius Garland. I think he could, in the next couple of years, just beat out Darius Garland potentially. I think this is a really versatile offensive player who is also, someone who can like contribute to an okay team defense. He's under athletic, but he's super smart. He's a good processor. He was the best player on a really good team. I think that people are too locked into the negatives that they're overlooking some pretty huge positives here. And so I like Wagler a lot, and especially for a team like the Clippers, who I think their future is pretty up in the air, like with Kawhi Leonard, with Darius Garland, whatever. Like they traded Ivica Zubac for this pick. I think this is a great pick because I think if you want to try to be maybe a little bit more competent, he could help you be more competent. But if you're also like, let's throw in the towel, let's get some assets, and let's see what this team can be in the next 5 years, I think Wagler is a great start to a potential rebuild. So I'm in on this pick. I don't have a ton of thought. I didn't really like Baba Miller that much or Nick Martinelli. Miller's like a good bet. I'm interested to see if they want to play him at the 5 or the 4. He's a crazy athlete in a straight line, at least. Who can kind of like do the requisite amount of like dribbling and passing and stuff to like exist on an NBA floor. I just think he's probably too skinny and not a good enough rebounder to be a 5, and not quite a good enough ball handler to be 4. But he is interesting for me. This is an A draft. Where are you at with it?
I really like the Keaton Wagler pick here at 5. I think he's really good. I think he's one of the 7 or 8 best players in the draft. I had him at 7 on my board. I would have preferred Kingston Flemings at this spot, but like same tier. And I do think that Keaton is really interesting because he's the kind of player who can play. I said this during our live stream, but he can play both with your star and then on his own. He has this upside as a point guard, as a shot creator, as any number of things. And then he's also able to fit in as just a shooter, connector, quick processor, does all this cool stuff. And I really like him. I really like this pick here. I think he kind of buoys this draft. I don't love Baba Miller, but at 36, with all the people I really like gone, other than like an Emmanuel Sharp, like that's fine. I think Baba's fine. I am always amused that the Clippers draft these guys who are just so athletic and suck at playing basketball. It always makes, Yannick Conan Niederhauser comes to mind. But I do think that Martinelli is different than that. At least he's kind of shooty, I guess. The Clippers have seen some success with these like wing-sized shooters, drafting them in the past, finding spots for them to play in their lineups. I'll give him a B. I think the Keaton pick is really good. The Baba Miller and Nick Martinelli ones are fine. I think for their slots, it's okay value. So Keaton almost dragged it up to a B+, but I'd say that this is like on the 76, 77 out of 100 and not a 78, 79, 80. So good draft.
Yeah. I think that's fair. One thing I quickly want to say about Martinelli, the one thing I'll say is that he does play really hard. He was crazy unproductive, but he plays hard. He does like, I think if he is on a 2-way, which I'm sure he is, I actually think this is a good use of a 2-way in that he could play some regular season minutes like next year and just help out, which is there's 2 uses of a 2-way, right? This is someone I actually believe in, who I want to develop to be a good full contract player within the next 5 years. And then there's I really need someone who can just like exist on the court out there, kind of. And Martinelli, I think, is at least physically strong enough and plays hard enough and can make enough shots to be the latter. So up next, the Nets would take Michael Brown at 6. They take Joshua Jefferson at 28 and Tyler Bilodeau at 43. I'd imagine Bilodeau is a full contract. 43 is kind of in that questionable range, but I'd imagine he's a full contract. I mean, if you're the Nets, why are you drafting a two-way guy? Like, you're the Nets. Coop, how'd you feel about this draft?
I think I'm lower on Michael Brown. He's all right. Just kind of Jalen Greeny in some ways, where it's like he's very limited athletically, despite the fact that he is super quick and explosive in a lot of ways. He doesn't have a lot of surrounding athletic tools to really be dominant right now. He could physically develop. I do like that the Nets need a scorer and like someone who can actually put pressure on the rim, and that'll be Michael. But we could also see the same kind of thing that happened to Jalen Green, where it's just he gets thrown into the fire too early and he loses so much of the proper development that he really, really needs. And that would suck because I think he's a good prospect, not a great one. Josh Jefferson here. I like Josh. Josh is like the kind of guy who should be coming off the bench for a winning program. I think he could honestly, there's worlds where he starts for the Nets. Like, he just knows how to play, and he's 6'10". He can do a lot of the like DHO stuff that the Nets really liked to run in the past. And I do think that they're trying to lean more into that. We've seen that with, their draft last year, where it's like, let's just get all the playmakers. But I do think Josh Jefferson is like, he's not as funky of a playmaker as a lot of the guys they've drafted, but he is functional, right? You can get him into a DHO. He can throw the Hartenstein backdoor. He can dribble a little bit, run a DHO. He's not going to like turn it downhill or anything, but he's just a functional player. I do really like that pick, but it feels kind of like a waste. And then honestly, I don't know that much about Bilodeau. I'm going to give them a C+ here. I do worry. I wish they had taken someone a little bit more bulletproof than Mikal. I worry that their development infrastructure is really, really lacking. But you are also improving that infrastructure by drafting someone like Jefferson. As long as they actually give him a full contract and he actually gets to play. If he gets like buried behind Noah Clowney and Danny Wolf, then this is a D. Like, straight up. This could really be like a nightmare if the Nets play it wrong.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I was really hoping Michael, for his sake, would go to a program that knows how to win. But I still like Brown, and I still do kind of have like outside of the Wagler and Okories of this draft, I do think he's one of the higher upside guards. Jefferson is fine. I mean, I don't really, at 28, he's fine. I think I had him at like 24. I don't believe super strongly in like his NBA playerdom, and that he was a really bad finisher, and he's a good but not like great defender, and kind of mediocre athlete. Good but kind of high turnover passer. He's got to really make shots, in my opinion, which he can. The form looks nice, but the touch isn't great. So, I'm not super in on him, but he's not horrible. Brown is obviously the prize here. I like Bilodeau for what it's worth. I think Bilodeau, there's a chance that he's just one of the best 6'9" shooters in the world. There is value in that. Like, there's only so many huge guys who can shoot like that. I think as a bet at 43, it's perfectly reasonable. This is probably a B- for me. I like Michael here. He would not have been my pick, but I can see the vision a little bit. But I do just like, it's like, what is this team? Like, what are we working towards now that you have Julius Randle and Michael Porter Jr.? And, I want Michael to have the ball in his hands and to make plays and decisions, whether that be in more limited minute capacity on a better team or, whatever. I think it's funny too, because Jordi Fernandez seems like such a good coach, and it's like the Nets give him no one who can play defense. Like, until they drafted Joshua Jefferson, the last 7 draft picks the Nets have made is they haven't drafted but one person who can actually play defense, in Drake Powell. Like, it's kind of unbelievable. So I'll say B-, maybe even C+. It's kind of whatever. let's talk about, in my opinion, probably the worst draft of the night. The Sacramento Kings take Darius Acuff at 7. They take Alex Caravan at 29 and Emmanuel Sharp at 45. Coop, I know you love Mono, but other than him, how did you feel about this draft?
Really bad. I know people are really in on Acuff. We're not. uh, just such a limited player outside of the shot making. And is the shot making really good enough to be star level? Probably not. The bar for that is incredibly, incredibly, incredibly high. I think the playmaking is overrated. The defense is worst we've ever scouted. Awful. I think this has got to be like an F. As much as I like Emmanuel Sharp, uh, Caravan is such a meh player. Like, I get it. You want like a serious contributed to winning guy, but there's better shooters like Emmanuel Sharp or like other serious winning players who actually contributed with stuff other than their shooting, who are out there. And I don't think Caravan was really one of them. We didn't like full deep dive scout him, but everyone who's watched college basketball has seen Caravan play for the last few years. There's a reason he was the last guy to come out from those championship teams, and it's because he was the worst. Manuel Sharp is at least tough, culture builder, really good shooter, but like blowing a 7th overall pick on a tiny, not tough, tough shot making guard. What have we been watching the league get away from for the past year or two? It's that exact type of player who cannot bring value in other ways. And as much as I like Acuff. Like, he is good. He's one of the better tough shot making guards out there. The bar is so high. Do not take that guy this high when there are better bets to take. So I hope it works out for them. I always feel bad for the Kings. And for Emmanuel Sharp's sake, I hope they're good. But it's an automatic fail. I don't have a choice in the matter.
100%. I mean, this is enough for me. I did do a full scout on Caravan. I don't think we got to him on the pod because I was like, I don't want to waste a lot of time on guys I'm not particularly in on. But yeah, I mean, he was a draftable two-way guy for me that you took in the first round and now have on a 4-year contract. There's toughness there. Him and Emmanuel Sharp are similar in that they're both part of winning. They both are really tough. They both can kind of shoot, but with funky forms. And my biggest concern with Caravan is that he can't actually shoot. Like, I don't know how many NBA players end with their hand twisted inward the way he does, as much as he does. Like, and you can always tell when he's going to make or miss a shot based on whether or not the hand twists inward. Yeah, I mean, there's an F. I just don't think Darius Acuff is good enough to take this high. And it's as simple as that. I don't want to spend forever beating a dead horse. That doesn't mean I don't think he can be an NBA player. I had him in my tier of guys that I think are going to be NBA players, but I think he's way closer to like a backup rotation guard than he is like a star build around guard. He's not quite that level of passer, not that level of paint touch generator. And I also just truthfully, I don't know that he's that level of tough shot maker that he showed in college, to be that type of guy to manufacture, to warrant this high of a pick. Coop, at 8, the Hawks take your guy, Kingston Flemings. At 23, they take Zuby Ejiofor. And at 52, they take Henri Vassar. I'm guessing Vassar is on a two-way, but how did you feel about this draft?
I've seen some rumors of Vassar is actually going to be getting a full contract because he's like he's got some name recognition there. I love the Kingston pick. 3rd on my board. I think great value. One of my favorite players ever. Zuby, I'll get into all of these guys in more in depth in a second. But Zuby, I talked about this last night. I was on the Fear the Fro podcast about the Cavs taking Malik Thomas. And we talked about, the middle class of the draft has fallen out so bad that at some point you just got to be like, hey, let's take our favorite older player. And Ejiofor is not my favorite older player, but if you need a tough, tries really hard, pretty smart, decently athletic big man who can maybe play some small, some 4 or 5, and the Hawks they want more looks defensively. I think that that's something that Quinn Snyder really wants for them, and like go for it. There's better players that I wish they had taken, but at some point, if you just want to take your guys, it's fine. Uh, Getting Vsar at 52, I didn't love him, but I think that's about the right range for him. Like, if you're going to take a swing on a 7-footer anywhere, go for it in the 50s. I think this will end up being an A minus for me. I think the Kingston Flemings pick is an A. Zuby Ejiofor, I disagree with, but I see the value there. I would have preferred someone like a Terrace Reed. I think that would have been like a far better pick. But I think getting a guy like Ejiofor, who's proven himself to be he gets better. He's a contributor, wins the Big East Defensive Player of the Year. There's definitely worse swings to be taking. And Vsar doesn't impact my evaluation at all because he's just 7 feet tall and he's fine, I guess.
For what it's worth, shout out Vassar signing full contract. I thought he was worth the full contract. You're going to get that guy at 52. At a certain point, there's only so many human beings this massive who I think are have this level of ability to shoot and are not like truly horrendous athletes. Yeah, the Zuby pick I don't love, but I think he'll probably stick around. I think it's funny because it feels like what the Hawks really want right now is a gaggle of young bigs who can just all kind of do different things. Vassar is like kind of, you can squint and say maybe kind of replicable with Onyeka Okongwu, and Gay and Ejiofor and Newell are all kind of like different versions of a similar idea. And it's like, let's just figure it out. Like, Zuby's going to help him offensive rebound. He's probably going to space in the league. Not a crazy athlete, but, tough, smart. I'm fine with this pick. It's a little bit of a reach on my board. It's Kingston Flemings. I'm happy with it. I think it's a great fit for Kingston. It's not the pick I would have made. It's a slight reach on my board. I know you loved Kingston. I'm just a little concerned about the ceiling. I thought this was a team that, like, you're already a competent team with the 8th pick. You should take a swing on someone who I think has more chance to be a star. I just don't see a lot of like star upside with Kingston. I think he's going to be a perfectly reasonable point guard in the league, probably more in that like backup to spot starter, in my opinion, than like a true, like, okay, set it and forget it starting point guard. But he's going to get time to develop here. He's going to be a great fit in terms of their up-tempo scheme. He's, a really good guard athlete, especially in a straight line. You could squint and see some like De'Aaron Fox here long-term. If you really want to believe the true high ends. But this is kind of like a C plus draft for me. I'll say C plus because I do think the process of taking a point guard here instead of taking someone like Mara is good. But other than Vassar, none of these picks were great value picks on my board, and I'm not in love with any of these players. So I'm gonna say C plus. I thought the process was good. The guys that were taken, maybe not. I'm maybe not as high on. Coop, you called this one. At 9, the Dallas Mavericks take Morez Johnson Jr. At 25, they take Sergio Delaurier, who I am guessing is going to come over. I doubt they will draft someone at 25 to stash. At 48, they take Toby Lawal, who we did not scout, but had crazy combine numbers and played on absolutely horrendous Virginia Tech team. And then at 56, they take our guy, Fesfolod Ishchenko, who I'm guessing will get stashed. I bet he comes over to play Summer League and then stays overseas. But maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I'd imagine he's a two-way at best. But if so, that's a great use for a two-way, not to spoil too much. But, Coop, how did you feel about the Mavs draft here?
I accidentally predicted this in our mock draft. Morez is awesome. I love Morez Johnson. And if his coach thinks that he's the best of the 3 Michigan prospects, go for it. I am all in on swings like this. I think Merez has a lot of scheme versatility. I think he's a ceiling raiser and the kind of player that you want to put next to Flag. You could play Flag at the 3, him at the 4. If you want to go small, play Flag at the 4, him at the 5. I think he gives you a lot of versatility. I love his motor. I think getting to play with an elite playmaker like Flag will be really, really cool. Sergio, I didn't deep scout, but I watched a few clips and Bryce told me he sucked. So that pick kind of blows. Toby Lawal, you know what? Draft athletes. Like that late, if you want to go draft bad players who are athletic, I get it. I'd rather take the swing on someone who's tough, someone who could contribute to winning basketball, someone who could win you a random game if you gave him a two-way in the doldrums of February and March. And then the greatest dragged back up by Vsevolod Ishchenko. I love Ishchenko. He is sweet. If any team actually, if any team, other team had drafted Ishchenko, I would be like, oh, there's no room in the rotation for him. He's probably just a stash, but like, he could probably come over and actually play some minutes for the Mavs. They stink really badly. And I would love to see Ishchenko get real run next to Flag, more as a secondary guy who can shoot, also handle the ball. I think that'd be so sweet. My final grade will end up being a B. I'll go. I was originally going to do B minus, but as much as I don't like Sergio, Merez is very good, pretty young, and I predicted it, so it makes me look really smart and really cool. And Ishchenko is a great swing to take, even if you're going to stash him for a little bit. He's the kind of guy who could blow up in a year or two, and you could be begging to come over and play real minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It's weird to start with the last guy, but he is like the funkiest dude in this whole draft. Like, I hope he comes over and I hope he stays. I think he's better than Delaurier. This might come back to bite me because Delaurier is going to get a ton of NBA investment, and I'm worried that Ishchenko won't. But there's also always something with, players from areas that the NBA is in one way or another, the United States of America is considered enemies with, like Russia. And I don't want to get too deep into the geopolitical bag, but Sergio Delaurier being Spanish helps him out in that sense for sure. For what it's worth on Delaurier, like, I think there's a chance he succeeds. I did have a full contract grade on him, not a two-way grade. He is still big and can pass and can dribble and transition. He's just not at all like a half-court creator, and I'm not sure that he's a good enough shooter. He will throw some super funky passes. He every once in a while will get up for a shocking like dunk. He is pretty fast in a straight line, pushing the ball, but in the half court, his handle is just really exposed all the time. He plays super upright, not able to access his athleticism or his passing consistently. I think he's more of a factory good decision maker than he is some like high level processor. But I could see him succeeding. He kind of feels like a Dusty May guy too, honestly. Like if you told me like instead of going to the draft, Delaurier was going to come over and play college basketball, I'd be like, oh yeah, Michigan, yeah, Michigan, Duke, probably in there, right? Like it just kind of feels like correct. And then Merez, I just think this is a reach. Like I like Merez. I think Merez will be a good NBA player. And I even talked myself into the fit next to Lively or instead of Lively. Like I think he's versatile enough to potentially do both, especially if he shoots. He's really young. He's just super physically strong, and the motor is good, but he's a crazy load leaper. He doesn't get up very quick. I don't think he's going to be an elite shot blocker. In fact, I think he's going to probably be a below average NBA rim protector. Outside of just if he can figure out the rotation timing enough, just meeting guys outside the lane. But I just think this is a little bit high for someone without some upside. And also, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Mavs don't have their pick next year. And so I'm concerned that this was one of your bullets to fire to build around Cooper Flag, and you fired it on someone who I think is good, but who I don't think is like going to meaningfully help Coop in terms of lessening the offensive load at all. And I really think that is what the Mavs needed. It's part of why I would have been a little bit more in on even like an older guy like Yax Lendeborg. Not just because I thought Yax was better, but because it's a little bit of an easier fit for me. So I'm going to say C minus here. Again, I know I'm being mean. I do think there's a chance that they have 3 NBA players in this draft. If you have 3 NBA players, C minus seems low. I understand that. So, maybe I'm just being too much of a hater, but I don't love the process. This is kind of the opposite of the Hawks. The Hawks, I like the process, maybe not in love with who they picked. This, I just didn't love the process in a lot of ways, even though I think they probably ended up with some guys who are going to be good players, even if I don't necessarily think they're the right picks there. Let's move on to the Bucks. This is another one we're just going to kill, I'm sure. Braden Burries at 10, Nate Ament at 13, Malik Lewis at 60, and then a UDFA I kind of liked in Raf Castro. Coop, how did you feel about this draft?
Awful. I don't love the Braden Burries pick at 10 is crazy. He is kind of the rare high floor, low ceiling player. Like when you talk to, in my opinion, I think there's a very limited upside to what he does. I think he knows how to play, and I think that that's valuable, but he is still like a normal sized guard. He's older. And there's not much of what he does that I'm super confident in him like developing more, and like he's not special in any one area to where I'm like, oh yeah, this is the obvious thing. He just kind of does enough. And I kind of struggle with that. And then Nate Ament. Oh my God, where do we even start? I was joking about Nate Ament the entire night about where he would get drafted. And once the Bucks were up a second time, you knew that's where they were going. One of the worst drafting organizations in basketball was going to take Nate Ament. And I like Ament. I think I think he's a really funny guy. I think he's a cool guy, and I want him to succeed really badly. And I like all the stupid pictures of him like making a face, especially because his face is really long and like kind of comedic. He kind of looks like a comedy. I'm cutting that out of the episode. But I might leave it in because I might be too lazy to edit this, but he just looks funny.
I was going to say, are you really going to take it down? Like that's a rush you, but this probably needs to go out tomorrow before the free agency starts. So it's I don't know that you're really going to want to dig through this to find your bad joke. Yeah. I mean, Ament seems like a cool guy. His dad looks like Colonel Sanders, which is awesome. I think that's really cool. I'm a part of me wants to root for Nate because, like, I think it'd be nice for one of these like high RSCI, but like obviously super fake wings to succeed, because it's becoming too easy for draft people to be like, well, look at Cam Reddish, look at Zaire Williams, look at, and run down this list. It's like one of these guys needs to hit so we can be like, well, but what if he's Nate Ament instead of Cam Reddish? But until that happens, it kind of feels like this is following along a path. This is an F. I like Burries. I think Burries is an NBA player. I've said this before. I even think Ament could be a valuable NBA player. There's just no star there. If he's an NBA player, what he is he figures out how to use his foot cleverness to get around screens and actually be like a really good point of attack defender, which is like, that's not easy development. It's really hard to look at this person who doesn't play very hard and say, your job is going to be to chase Steph Curry and Jalen Brunson around screens all day. That's how you're going to make your living in the NBA. The amount of guys who have the mental toughness and wherewithal to be like, if that's what I got to do, that's what I got to do. It's really rare. I mean, it's just not a thing that you see very much. So I'm not saying it's like a great bet, but that's what the bet actually is with Nate Ament, in my opinion, is that he's huge, but he has really clever feet and naturally good lateral quickness that if he could just access better, then maybe there's something there. For what it's worth, Malik Lewis, I kind of like at 60. And then they drafted Raf Castro, or they signed Raf Castro to a 2-way. I didn't get time to see him, but he was someone I was really excited about, really fun stat profile, developed over, I think, 5 years at George Washington, which is just kind of a cool story, right? You don't see that very often. So I'm kind of rooting for Castro. Probably sticks around the fringes of the league as like a two-way big, maybe a low minute, kind of like, who was Stone's guy a few years ago who played at like USF, who was on the Knicks this year and barely played, but he was on the Grizzlies. Trey Jemison. So quick breaking news. Narcisse Ngoy, who was drafted by the Clippers, is still going to attend Auburn University next year. This is, as far as I know, the first ever draft and stash in the NCAA where you draft someone and then you let them go play college basketball. I guess technically James Najee was also still an already drafted stash guy who was playing the NCAA last year. But for whatever that's worth, Narcisse Ngoy is going to Auburn next year. I give the Bucks an F, even though I do think Braden Burries is probably an NBA player. I don't think he's a particularly valuable one. The Warriors take Yaxel Lendeborg at 11, and then they take LeJay Jones from Florida State at 54. I did not get to watch LeJay. I heard some good things from smart people, so I think there's a chance he's like a kind of defense-first wingy guy, played with the ball a lot. Not too dissimilar from the Florida State guy last year, but he was on a better team and more kind of competence around him, so probably a better prospect, but I'm forgetting that guy's name from last year. He was drafted by the Wizards. Anyways, I didn't watch LeJay, so I don't want to get into it. But Coop, Yaks at 11 to the Warriors. I mean, it kind of felt like the perfect, like, if you could like pick pre-draft, like, okay, like 10 picks you're super confident are going to happen wherever they're going to happen. One of them would have been, well, the Warriors probably take Lendeborg at 11, right? Why is this such an ideal pick and fit?
Because the Warriors desperately need guys who are just good at basketball, and that is Yaxel. Yaxel is he was the second best player in college basketball last year, was the best player on, in my opinion, the best team that I've ever watched in college basketball. To be fair, I started watching later in life, but like this Michigan team was incredibly good, and Yax was, in my opinion, by far and away the best player. Guys like this who are this good just tend not to fail, no matter the age. He's going to come in. He's going to knock down shots when you need it. He's going to punish switches when you need it. He's going to lock down on defense sometimes. He's going to play perfect off-ball defense, help around the rim. He can play some small ball 5. He can play the 4. We've seen he can play the 3. Like, the Warriors desperately need bodies, and Yaxel is the ultimate, just like, I'll come in and do whatever we need to do to win. I think it's ridiculous he fell this far. I think this has to be an A+. I think it's a perfect fit, and I think Yaxel is just so incredibly good. I didn't watch LeJay either, but at 54, I don't particularly care. Doesn't affect my grade. This will be my second A+ of the day, along with the Grizzlies. Just too good. You know, I wish there was a second one, but a second like elite player I felt really good about for them, but good for them.
Yeah, for what it's worth, with Yaks, I can't give this an A+ because a Corey's still on the board and Quaintance is still on the board, and so I can't get all the way there. But Yaks is just, I mean, he's a stud. He's just a star, and this is a team that is just like really good at this whole drafting thing. Like, I think we give the Warriors a lot of shit for how they've handled some things, and I understand that. But like, Brandon Pajemski at 17, great pick. Will Richard last year, stud to get that guy like 53 or whatever the fuck they got him at. Like, this is a really good drafting team. It's kind of why I'm like, you know, I'm excited to see LeJay in Summer League, because I imagine that he is going to be probably competent. I mean, this is the team that turned Pat Spencer into like a real kind of borderline NBA player. Like, Yax is just, he's an actual 3-4. This team is desperately needed. Who can just do everything. He, I've even mentioned that I think there's some untapped star potential here in that, like, he's still like just super physical, rugged driver who I think could maybe figure out how to transition some of the transit, or figure out how to turn some of the transition rim pressure into half court rim pressure. But even if he doesn't, like he guards a lot of positions. He's going to be in the right place defensively. He's going to rebound. He's going to make decisions. Just a really, really high level player to get at 11. I don't care how old he is. This is an A for me. The Thunder, Coop, I'm sure this will hurt your soul, had an excellent draft. At 12, they take Adai Mara. At 16, they take Bennett Sturts. This is an A for me. You could have switched these guys and it would have been an A for me. I'm super high on Bennett Sturts. You should go back and listen to that pod. I ended up with him at 9. I think a lot of people really misunderstand how much he was, he's been in one context basically his whole college career. This slow pace, slow it down, make competent half-court decisions without taking any risk. I think he's a better athlete than he gets credit for. I've seen a lot of people say, well, he doesn't get by anyone. And I'm just like, I just think you're wrong. He does consistently, especially in pick and roll. He gets to the second level all the time. I think he's going to be some elite finisher in the league? No, but he's going to know how to pick his spots. This is, I don't know where the minutes are going to come from for him on this team. Like, I'm guessing that this team, they just moved off Aaron Wiggins. They'd probably end up moving off of Isaiah Joe too. And so, but still Kassan Wallace and AJ Mitchell are around. Like, are they going to play Bennett Sturts at the 2? I don't know exactly how that works, but at a certain point at 16, you take a guy I have at 9. I got to love it. And Adai Mara, while I think he has a lot of problems, he's no Wemby stopper, is still a 7'4" solid athlete, can do a couple different things defensively, even if he's not, I don't think he's ever going to be like elite defensively. He can do a couple different things. He can finish well outside the lane. He's the type of guy who I actually think in bench units could be good enough as like a post-up threat to get some, gravity there, especially if you're going to switch. He can do some of the perimeter decision-making stuff. Even if I don't think the passing is great, he can at least make some connective reads. I think it's just a really good draft, 12 and 16, to get two guys who I think are likely to be starting caliber NBA players is really, really impressive. And Bennett Sturts might never start for this team, obviously. The Thunder probably never need someone like him to start, but, they might lose Lou Dort, and so then you're talking about a starting lineup of SGA, AJ Mitchell, J-Dub, and so then maybe Bennett Sturts is a little bit more important. Like, there's all types of ways this could work out, but I just think these are two great picks. Coop, where are you at with the Thunder draft here?
Great draft. I do think that, like, one of the Thunder's 2 issues is that they don't have as much half-court creation without Shea. I mean, we saw that with the J-Dub injury this year. Like, they definitely need more of that. They have a lot of cool players, and I do think Sturts fixes that. I do worry that Mara is, like, just another dork who's going to get shoved into a trash can. He's cool. He's really good. And I think especially for their regular season dominance, they really need, a guy like Mara who actually wins you minutes, right? Even if it's only 15, 16 minutes a game. Awesome. Like, the Thunder are one of the few teams that can afford to have a guy like that on the roster because the rest of their players are so damn good. But I do have to give it an A- because it doesn't solve their true and real issues. So sadly, that'll be that. Let's move on to a far sadder class than that.
Yeah. So the Hornets take, and these will probably start to go quicker as we're leaving the lottery. The Hornets take Hans Steinbach at 14 and Christian Anderson at 18. Now, to be somewhat fair to the Hornets, I wonder at least a little bit, did they think that one of Sturts or Corey might have been available at 18? But obviously the Pistons moved up to get a Corey. My guess is they did that specifically to swipe him from the Hornets. And I think the Hornets are kind of left standing with a guy who I just don't really like at the point guard spot. Like, I think Christian Anderson is, to me, just like not particularly good. I know that sounds reductive, but not that there's no path to being an NBA player, but guys that can't get to the rim at all are just really hard for me to bet on. Like, he's an okay passer. I don't think he's some super complex high-level reader. He's a really good off-the-dribble shooter. There is value to that, but he's not he's not quite in that like top tier of like elite bombers to me. Like, I don't think this is going to be, LaMelo Ball in terms of like off the dribble shooting. I think he's more in that kind of next tier below. And he doesn't pair it with any rim pressure. He doesn't pair it with a ton of feel in transition. I I'm just not a huge fan. And then Steinbach, I think, is okay. I have some questions about like what position are they going to play him at? Like he doesn't help them protect the rim at all. He's a great rebounder. There's some upside for like some DHO stuff or some shooting, but I'm not I'm just kind of unenthused. This is a D draft for me. I'm just, this is a team I want to really believe in because I love Con Knipple. Like I thought, I had him at 2 on my board last year. I felt really good about that after his awesome rookie season. But this draft does not leave me particularly enthused. Coop, where are you at with the Hornets draft?
I got to go D plus, I think, which is kind of sad because I thought they had one of the better drafts last season. Like I thought just getting a bunch of serious players, to really kind of fix the culture, fix the vibe around, with Khan, awesome. And you saw that pay dividends this year. And then you go out and you get a one-way big man who is interesting. I like Hans. I think he's very obviously an NBA player, if just kind of like a very bland bench big. And then Christian Anderson, who's a massive reach for me here, which is a bit sad. He could really shoot, I guess, and Charlotte can always use more guys who can shoot. Christian Anderson doesn't create any advantages. He doesn't get to the rim. He doesn't do any of the things that real NBA point guards have to do. And that's a really hard sell. 2 reaches on my board, 2 weird fits with this team. They're fine. D plus. I will let you wax poetic here about the Detroit Pistons, but I'm going to say they get an A plus as well.
Absolute cinema. Detroit basketball is back, baby. I say this as someone who was really I didn't even scout. I didn't get to scout Dennis Jenkins last year, which was obviously a huge mistake. He's an awesome player. Abuka Corey should be the future starting point guard for this team and let Cade play a little bit more off the ball. Like this is an A plus home run draft pick at 17. And I think it's a baller move to move. I don't even know what they gave up. I don't give a fuck. I don't care what they traded. Like this is a baller move to move up to get your guy. I had a Corey at 4. Obviously, I was crazy high on him. I think he'll be an unbelievable transition player in the NBA, unbelievable rim pressure guy who's also a good off the dribble and off the catch shooter. And he's like a serious basketball player too. Like for all the things you can say, like he's also just like, he does compete defensively. He knows how to execute. He doesn't try to do too much despite being someone who had to score a ton of points for his team to compete in any game. He wasn't just doing nonsense. He wasn't giving up on plays. Just a really, really good basketball player. I really recommend you guys go back and listen to our podcast if you're a Pistons fan, because I love this guy. I think in time he should be a starter in this league, and I think if he's a starter, there's a chance he's like a borderline all-star type guy. Like I think the touch is great. I think the handle is unbelievable. I think he's a great downhill driver. But I also, like I said, I think he can compete well enough defensively to fit into this ethos. And truthfully, I don't think the Pistons take guys that they don't think are serious. Like this is a team that doesn't like sanction buffoonery. If you're going to play for JB Bickerstaff, like you got to have a little bit of dog in you. And I just think that Corey has all the things you could want, like for me, from a small guard. He's does all the things you could want to be like a safe role player, but he also has the stuff that I'm looking for in terms of star upside. Like I think this is an absolute home run pick. And then Ugana Onyenso at 53, I think is a great flyer. This is a guy who has an elite skill. He's an unbelievable shot blocker. Not a great rebounder, not a crazy lob threat. Can't really shoot, but shot at least an okay, amount from the free throw line and took some threes this year. So maybe you could squint and see it. But special rim protector. Sometimes you're at 53. Yeah, take someone with a special skill. There's a lot of holes for sure, but I think that's good process. I just think the Pistons have suddenly become like a really competent, good franchise, and Corey is like proof of that to me. I'm just like, yeah, 100%. I think their last few drafts have been really good. Even when I'm not fully in, I was like a Chaz Lanier. Okay, I'm like whatever, but I can see the process. I think that's legitimate process. Obviously, they took Jalen Duren a few years ago. Like I'm really really in on this Pistons team. I'm in on this pick for a Corey. Coop, do you have any thoughts here that you want to say other than you're going to give it an A, or did you say A or A plus?
A plus. Abuka, like fifth or sixth on my board. I had him at six. Last or second to last of my flawed star bets left on the board, and I think this will be the second to last A plus that I'll give out today. I don't have much else to add. Did it much justice. And now we're at 19 with the Raptors, who take Allen Graves and then Jaden Bradley at 50. I think Graves is really funky. He's really interesting. This is fine value for him. I had him at 11. Like, good snag. I think the Raptors always want to get these weird, funky forwards and just bring in more and just see if any of them hit and turn into stars. And Graves is fun. Graves is interesting. Another guy who just tries hard, knows how to play. We've seen with guys like Scotty Barnes that funk can translate to stardom. And I think that Graves is kind of the next big swing at that, especially in this class. He's got some really fun defensive chops. I think he could really fit in with what the Raptors want to do, what their identity is. And then Jaden Bradley, I really like. Jaden Bradley is like a good, tough point guard. He's worse than Jamal Shed. So I don't think he's going to play at all. But if Jaden Bradley can come in and I think he can guard some twos in the NBA and cut all right and handle the ball a little bit. Like, he could be a guy. I think this will get an A minus for me. I think there were better picks available, but this is a great process. Go get your guy at 19, and then Jaden Bradley again at 50. This is just textbook Raptors, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
Coop, I feel like this is the most homogenous we've ever been. This is an A minus for me too. I like Graves a lot. I think Graves is excellent. I have some concerns about exactly what he does on this specific team. Though I've seen some people say oh, this is Colin Murray-Boyles 2.0, and I'm like, no, I think this is a wing, not a big. And I've said that on the pod. I think the development path for him is to develop into more of a wing, maybe lose some weight. I think he can play next to Scotty Barnes. I think he can play next to CMB. I also, truthfully, think there's a chance that CMB is low key on the trade market. I think if they had made a move for LaMelo Ball, CMB might have been involved. Which you can take one way or the other. I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying he for sure will be traded or anything, but I don't. While CMB had a good year, you don't not draft a good player because of him right now. So I have some questions about exactly what the role is, but I'm also just this is a team that needs shooting, that needs more competent defensive play. This is not a team, because CMB is not some crazy elite rim protector. It's hard for them, and he's still kind of the center of the future, I think. It's hard for them to suffer like pigeons defensively. You kind of have to run five. If you're going to run a switching scheme, you got to be able to run, at least 4.5 guys that can guard. And Allen Graves, I think, is going to be able to guard in the league. He's going to make shots. I think some of the passing can develop. Like you said, funk can develop. Right now, there's no obvious offensive star skill set, but I think there's a perfectly good role player who's just a really plus rebounder, who can make some decisions, who has elite feel in terms of guarding defensively. One-on-one guarding, he is legitimately really good despite what looks like slow feet at times. Jaden Bradley, I don't have a ton of thoughts on. I don't think he really sticks, but he is at least physically strong enough and tough enough, and we'll soak up some regular season minutes. So that's an A-. Let's talk about one of the weirdest drafts here, Coop. The Spurs at 20 take Jaden Quaintance, who I have at 6 on my board. That in and of itself is an excellent pick. Then they take Taurus Reed, another center who can't shoot. Then at 42, they take Jacoby Gillespie. And then at 44, they take Malik Brown, a forward who can't shoot. This is a really funky draft. Now, one that I like, because I had Taurus Reed at 24 or 23 on my board, I think. First round, one of the last guys with the first round grade, they get him at 26. I had Jaden Quaintance at 6. I still, if he's healthy, I believe super strongly in him. But it feels like they're kind of loading up on bigs. They don't want Vic to have to play center very much, at least in the regular season is my guess. But I still feel like this team is not addressing its biggest need, which is you should probably drop one guy that can shoot. But at a certain point, I am like, if you take Quintance, like I just have to give you an A. Even though it's a huge steal on my board, I'm actually not sure I'm going to go to an A plus because I don't love the whole process here in general. I don't really know what this team building idea is for a team that's like, on that championship borderline. But I do think Quintance is the type of guy, if he hits, could help them get over that hump. I think he can just be so good defensively. You can throw out some true monster defensive lineups with Vic and Quintance next to each other if you can make that work offensively. So this is an A for me. And again, I love Taurus. I think Taurus is a great player. I'm not sure where his minutes come from right now. And he's a guy who I worry a little bit about if he's out of the rotation at the beginning of his career, that it just never sticks because he is old. And then I like Jacoby Gillespie at 42. I think he's probably going to stick in the league. Super steady. Reminds me a lot of someone on their roster, Jordan McLaughlin, potentially a better shooter than someone like that. Maybe a little bit of less of like a true high-level passer than that, but just someone who's smart, who's physically tough, can play defense, and hopefully make some shots, even though he didn't really shoot very well his senior year. Malik Brown, I don't have a ton of thoughts on. He's okay. He competes defensively. He's really smart on that end of the ball, but he's awful on offense, and he's also really skinny. So it leaves me kind of questioning what his role will actually be, but not a horrendous pick at 44. So that's an A draft for me. Coop, where are you at with the Spurs?
Dude, lockstep again. A draft. There are better picks to be made at some of these spots, but like Quaintance is sweet. He's a really good player. Like, if he is healthy, there's a world where the Spurs have the two best defensive bigs in basketball, and then the league's just over. Like, that pick is worth making at 20. There was not a higher ceiling player that you were going to get there, other than maybe the guy we'll talk about next, but that's a topic for later. Terrace Reed, awesome, tough. I think he's pretty decently switchable for a big. He's really cool. Jacoby Gillespie is just a good bet at a backup guard. I don't know much about Malik Brown. Didn't deep scout him. So A for me. Can we get into the best single pick of the night? LeBaron Philon at 22 to my hometown 76ers. That's crazy to say. Philon, I had at 5th on my board. Incredibly skilled player. Was the engine for a pretty good Alabama team. Improved a lot from year 1 to year 2. Younger than some of the freshmen in this class, despite being a sophomore. I think he can really shoot. He can really handle. I think he is the kind of player who can slot in with different lineups and do different things. There's potential for him to be like one of the best sixth men in the league and actually add value as a scorer because he can do it on and off the ball. I think he's got underrated playmaking chops. I think he's incredibly, incredibly good. And it's incredibly, incredibly stupid that he falls here to 22. A plus. I don't think you can give it any other grade than that.
Yeah, I mean, this has been the most obvious A plus across. I haven't looked at a ton of draft grades, but the couple I've seen, I mean, everyone knows. And there's a reason. I mean, the 76ers can't keep getting away with this. Like, we can't just Daryl Morey gets fired and we're still letting obvious good guard players fall to this team. Like, you have some question as to what are they even going to do, I guess, but he fits in a rotation. Like, if it's going to be, I think you play probably some next to Maxey, even though they're, that's going to be some sieve stuff defensively at the top, but you can play next to VJ. He can make shots off the ball, but he can be good on the ball. He's very different from Maxey, but they kind of have a similar best skill, which is some weird kind of funk and touch as mid-range scores that can hopefully translate out to deep off the dribble shooting. I just think this is a great pick. I don't know exactly what he looks like in Philly, but I'm glad that Philly didn't think about it. Part of being a good organization is just being if there's someone who's just really good that falls to us, we just draft that guy and we'll figure it out. And I think this is a great pick. I think Philon will be, if this is where he stays for his whole career, probably one of the best sixth men in the league. Behind that starting duo of guys. Really, really happy with this pick for them and really hopeful that, they can be, they can find a role for him early. He does need someone to run pick and roll with, which is a kind of a concern. I think Joel Embiid's not really some high level pick and roll big, but if they, maybe it's Bona, maybe it's whatever. And I think, he could exist in some awful actions. The toughest thing with Violent is just not a crazy athlete, but this is still an A+. I mean, I had him at 13 on my board, I think, to get him at 22. Lottery guy falling this low. I mean, just a home run. The Lakers, Coop, at 24, they draft Cam Carr, and then they get one of my favorite UDFA guys in Peter Suter. This is probably a B+ for me, but I'm going to give the caveat that I'm pretty sure, and I'll check to be sure while you're talking, but I'm pretty sure they got my favorite UDFA. Every draft is going to have one or two UDFAs that stick in the league for a while, and so I'm going to put my money in that's Peter Suter, and that would make your grade, that would probably end up being worth more than a B+. But I like Cam Carr fine. I had him exactly at 24. I would have rather taken for this team specifically, probably like a Braden Smith or a Taurus Reed, probably Taurus Reed. But Cam Carr I think is perfectly reasonable here. My concern is that the shot doesn't translate in the way that I think some think it will, but he's a tremendous athlete. He's going to get to cut out a lot of the bad on-ball process and decision-making that he had at Baylor. And I think he competes enough defensively to be an okay point of attack defender, which this team does need, because Austin Reeves is like an okay help defender, and Luka can have his moments at least as a rebounder. This team needs someone to guard the ball. And I think Cam Carr can at least help carry that load in the regular season. So B+ for me. I'm a fan. And again, I think Suter, for what it's worth, we didn't get to dive super deep into him, but just super smart, super physically strong, shot an insane level this year, even though it was fairly low volume. I just think teams need more ball handling always. Even a team like the Lakers just need another guy. Just help bring the ball up. Hey, Luka's hurt. Help Bronny James out when Bronny's getting pressed full court. Bring the ball up, make good decisions in the half court, make shots. I just think Suter is he is the ideal jack of all trades. Like he doesn't really have any big holes in his game. He competes okay defensively. He's not like a sieve out there because he's strong. He can kind of move his feet. He rebounds really well. Good decision maker, ball mover, can run pick and roll. Just a really good overall player. So I'm a fan of his, and I think that's a great two-way signing. Cooper, you got the Lakers.
I feel I wanted to give it a B, and then you think about it, it's like Cam Carr's a good fit for what they want to do. Like just a good athletic wing. We've seen Luka's kind of turned Rui into just like a pretty valuable player, and I think Cam Carr is like pretty good shooter, can do it off a little bit of motion. Would I preferred if it was Isaiah Evans? Sure, but like Cam Carr, slightly more athletic, a little smaller, a little more proven. I don't mind it. And then Suter's fine. Like Suter is a good bet in UDFA. Like you just need guys who can play. If you're the Lakers, like get wings who can play on or off the ball. Great, B+. The Celtics, I think, are a different story. I think I'm gonna off rip just say C+ for them. I think they got two guys who are not particularly good at basketball. And if it was any other organization, this is probably a D+. But I do trust the Celtics and their development staff to find ways to get value out of these guys, to develop them into the players that they want them to be. I think the Dylan Mitchell pick is like truly a bad one, but like Chris Sinak is a fine project, at 27. If you can develop him into like a drop or like at the level big, and you can get the footwork up to level, and you can get him to just be a pick and roll big, that's a great pick. And I do think that if any team is equipped to get that out of him, it's the Celtics. So there are other players I wish they had taken, but decent process for a good organization.
You and I feel pretty different about Dylan Mitchell, it sounds like. I like Mitchell in this role, and that he's kind of just like old Jordan Walsh. Good vertical athlete. I've said this a few times, so I sound like a broken record to those that listen religiously. But the hope I think is not that he becomes some competent shooter, but that he actually has some gravity because he's such a good offensive rebounder that you can't just like completely forget about him. So you can start to mix him in terms of like running some grenade actions or something where you're throwing to the corner, not for him to get a shot, but because there is at least someone kind of guarding him, even if they're in help, and immediately like stepping up into like a stampede action for a Tatum or a Brown or Pritchard or whoever is on this team that's not on this team right now. And if someone else is shooting, that he's crashing and at least maybe getting a hand on the ball and pushing it out. He's a good defender. He's kind of an all or nothing defender. He's not like some just always just in the right place and 100% making great decisions and never taking risks. He's going to take some risks. He's going to get beat time to time, but he also can have these moments where he just looks absolutely electric. He just has someone completely in a box, or he just explodes to get a ball that it feels like no one else could get their hand on, and then windmills in transition. Like, he is kind of an unbelievable athlete, and he plays pretty hard. I wish he was either a little bit stronger physically. Like, he can't really guard up. He can't guard fives. He's actually kind of more like a 2-3 defender to me. Like, I think he's even going to struggle with the more physical fours in the NBA. Even like someone like a Jason Tatum, like, is he physically strong enough to hold a Tatum? I'm not sure. But I think he would do well on like the Hardens and the Donovan Mitchells of the world. There's at least a little bit of like Dean Wade here. Could he get to be the level of shooter Wade is? Probably not. But I don't hate that pick. Sanak, I just don't believe in. Like, and he seems like a great kid. I'm rooting for him. Obviously, you see him standing next to Adam Silver, like fighting the tears in his eyes. Yeah, that always kind of gets you a little choked up. And you want to root for guys. And again, there's a part of me that's a Houston fan, and so I want to root for the guy. But I just don't really believe in anything he does on the basketball floor right now. Crazy athlete. Maybe they get something out of him in terms of like offensively, I think there's paths to success, but defensively, I think he's really far away. I just think his decision making, his frame, none of it really suggests high level defender to me. So this is a D plus, which is funny because you hated the picks even more than me, and somehow you end up with a whole grade higher. But I think Dylan Mitchell could be an NBA. Maybe I'll say C minus. If you think someone in the 40s could be a valuable NBA player, it should probably be at least a C minus. But I don't love either of these picks, but I can't hate them. The Suns at 30, the final first round pick we're going to talk about. They draft Koa Pete, no UDFAs, no second round picks. Coop, what's your thought here?
D. Koa Pete's fine. Yeah, I don't know. Better swings to take, but I guess the thing is, actually might be a D plus because Koa Pete is at least kind of young, right? Like, at least you're not just blowing a pick. And I do think there's like worlds where he's valuable. I just don't think those worlds really exist. And I'm not a big fan of Koa Pete. I think there's not really anything that he does that brings a ton of value on an NBA floor right now. Very raw, needs a lot of development, and I don't know if the Suns are that organization. This is like that right here is where you're seeing the gap of like, do I trust this organization or not? Because if this was the Celtics taking him, C plus, but it's the Suns, so it's a D plus.
I'm going to go C minus. I think Koa Pete is perfectly reasonable as the last pick of the first round in terms of my board. In fact, I think I had him at like 28 or 27, something like that. But why is this not Isaiah Evans? I just don't like. This is a team that could absolutely use a jolt of shooting off the bench, just another guy to, make some plays and some reads and just give you another wrinkle, behind a Grayson Allen and a Devin Booker and, Colin Gillespie. Like, I think Evans absolutely, for how skinny he is, has the toughness to play this type of scheme that they like to defensively. And I don't understand why we're letting Isaiah Evans fall to the second round. Frankly, like that to me, the most egregious thing that happened on draft night is that Caravan and Pete go 29 and 30 instead of taking someone obviously good like Isaiah Evans. I feel like that's a huge miss. At 31, Coop, your Rockets take Bruce Thornton. What are your thoughts here?
I got really excited that this was Isaiah Evans, and then they left me high and dry with Bruce Thornton. Future EuroLeague MVP, Bruce Thornton. Also could have taken Braden Smith, who can actually dribble and actually shoot, which are like the two things this team needs. and can also pass, which is the other thing this team needs. Bruce Thornton can shoot and kind of dribble, but he's not like an advantage creator. If you believe that he's like this level of shooter, then cool, I guess. Like, get a good shooter. He's an efficient one. Uh, I just don't. I think this is like a C. It's fine. It's just like it's kind of a mail it in, like, oh, but the stats. And it's like, well, you kind of look at the context of the stats. How much do you really believe? And I don't. I don't think that the tape really inspires me all that much. So flat C.
I think Thornton is a fine backup guard bet, like just fine. Again, I think he's more likely to be like a really good EuroLeague player than he is, a true NBA guy. But he is at least like the ball does go in the basket. Everyone says this, like, what if the ball just goes in the basket at this level? I understand that. He can't. He's a great mid-range scorer. I wish he was more of a bomber from three, but he can't. I mean, he can really shoot. I think he makes a lot of sense off the bench behind someone like a Reed Shepard as you develop a Reed. I don't know what the plan is with FEV. Like, I just, there's paths here, but I'm just not super enthused. Like, I don't think he's as good defensively as people think because he looks so physically strong, but he's so stiff in his movement patterns. Like, I don't know who he guards. Probably he has to guard like threes because I don't think you can really guard point guards. So if you're talking about this type of guy that you have to kind of hide and stash here and there, I'm just, not super into it. I don't think he's a very complex decision maker. He did not really play point guard for Ohio State this year. Janai Mobley brought the ball up just as much as he did, made a similar amount of reads. I mean, it just, he's a fine player, but I think this is a little rich for my blood, especially again with Isaiah Evans on the board. And that is so I'm going to say, I don't know, D. In the second round, it's hard for me to like get angry, but especially now, Isaiah Evans goes off the board at 33 to the Timberwolves, and then at 59 they take Trey Kaufman-Renn. I don't really care about Trey Kaufman-Renn. I don't think he's good. I don't think he's an NBA player, but this is an A pick for me. I think Isaiah Evans is great. He's just a really good basketball player. Is he a starter? Probably not, and now especially with this team, but this is now going to be one of the best shooting teams in the NBA now that they've traded for LaMelo Ball. I think Evans should play like immediately. Like, how much he'll play depends because, Dosunmu, Ball, and Edwards are going to play a good chunk of those backcourt minutes. I'm sure we see plenty of three-guard lineups with those guys, but Evans should play. I mean, he should fill minutes early in his career because he can just really shoot off the ball, but he's also just an overall good off-ball mover. He's a commensurate athlete with this type of guy. I mean, I think he's better than Terrence Shannon Jr. right now. I'm obviously a hater, but I just think this is a great pick. I think this is home run second round draft pick. The fact that two guys in the second round went ahead of someone like Isaiah Evans, I just don't really get, like, for the most part, NBA teams did not do things that made me scratch my head. I just don't get what I'm missing with Isaiah Evans that NBA teams are fading him for. Like, is it just that they think he's so limited? Like, there's plenty of limited ball handling decision makers that succeed in the league because in the NBA, it's also important that you just like don't turn the ball over ever and that you just make shots. You can cut, you can exist off the ball. He can compete defensively. He's not going to probably be a good defender. I'm not so high. I don't think this is like a starting off guard probably in the NBA, but rotation shooters are valuable. I mean, Tim Hardaway Jr. has made $1 billion in his NBA career. Like, I think Isaiah Evans could absolutely be, the level of guy that Tim Hardaway Jr. has been over the last few years. This feels like a pretty huge miss to me. This is my favorite second round pick. Pretty in on this for the Timberwolves. How'd you feel, Coop?
Yeah, great snag by the Timberwolves. You need lanky guys who can shoot and maybe can one day defend. I think that's fine. TKR, who cares? I don't. Like, you have. I think Zakarski's a better player.
They took the wrong. TKR. They took the wrong Purdue big man. That's what I'll say.
No, shut the fuck up, dude.
He's on your team now. Come on.
I don't care. He sucks. It's okay. It's okay. Isaiah Evans, I think, makes this like an A-. I think that's a good snag for them. TKR, I refuse to care about. 59th pick. I could go grab, a random big in UDFA, and there's a better chance he'd be an NBA player than TKR.
Yep, 100%. I'll take Malik Thomas quickly. This is like a B for me. I think this is fine. Maybe B minus. I'd say B minus actually. Like fine. Coop, you can just give a grade. You don't even need to give a ton of analysis. If you want to hear Coop's analysis, go listen to the Fear of the Fro podcast where he talked about this. Are they on YouTube too, Coop, or is it just a podcast?
Yeah, they are. They're on YouTube. They're on everything. You can search them up. Yeah, I'd say B. I was lower on Malik, but he's young. Pretty
Yep.
good.
Yep.
Fine
So
swing.
I'll go B minus. You'll go B. I think Malik is fine. He will probably help this team and that he can make some shots, but not crazy high on him. The Nuggets at 35 take Trevon Brazile, and at 49 to take Bryce Hopkins. I didn't get to Hopkins, but when I watched, and I was in on him a couple years ago as like a sneaky try to get him out early from Providence guy. I like Bryce Hopkins. I think there's a real chance. He makes a lot of sense for the Nuggets as like a really good cutter, physical post guy who you just hope can make shots. Trevon Brazile was not someone I was high on, but I do kind of like him for the Nuggets because it's like, let's just have, he has zero feel. He has no basketball feel at all. But let's just have one of the best athletes in the world who's also like 6'9" play next to Jokic for some minutes. And, hopefully I'm hoping that Daron Holmes is healthy and will play because I think Daron is still a great player. And I'm hopeful for him that he is going to actually get some run this year. And so Brazile next to him makes some sense, right? Like this is a team where low feel you can kind of get away with because so much of the mental capacity makeup of the team is lower, I guess. Like, or it's all that load is on one person. So I ended up kind of coming around to this. This is like a B minus draft for me. Coop, where are you at?
I mean, I like Brazile. I didn't watch Hopkins a ton. I think Brazile only makes sense as an NBA player next to Jokic. I think that alone makes it like a B. I think that's perfectly fine. I don't know enough about Hopkins, but he's all right. So Brazile shooting and dunking off of Jokic passes. He doesn't have to have feel. He doesn't have to know how to play basketball because Jokic knows for him.
I will say one quick thing that I am concerned about for Brazile. This is less to do with the Nuggets, but I do feel like he's someone who needs to would be helped by an up tempo offense. And the Nuggets were like super slow last year, if I remember that correctly. Their offense was not particularly fast. So, but anyways, obviously picking nits there. The Heat at 37, they take Ryan Conwell. At 41, they take Otega Owe. Some very smart people like Otega Owe, including our friend Chuck of Chucking Darts. He's a really smart guy. I didn't get to Owe much. I've obviously seen him plenty. I'm not really into either of these picks. Conwell, the one thing I will say is he kind of does remind me some of Gabe Vincent. So if, getting in that Heat development path, if he becomes more of a point guard, like he has that similar frame and like touch and like that. The real thing with Conwell is that he shot a shit ton of threes and made him at an okay rate, took him off of like quite a bit of versatility. They're never like hard movement, like not like Tyler Nickel shots or whatever, but took quite a few. And he has like the frame to be a point guard sized guy with his strength and stuff to be impactful. That's a nice start towards like a Heat development guy. So, I'm not going to be surprised if he's sticking around the league and making more money than he probably should when the Heat give up on him and he's stuck somewhere else. Like, that's fine. I can't get too low. And it's like I didn't love either of these guys. It's like a C. I'll say C. Do you even have a grade?
No, I don't. I didn't scout. There's only one person who I've really scouted past here that I like.
Yeah, so let's talk about that guy quickly. Let's talk about that guy.
Yeah.
Quickly. The Pacers take Braden Smith at 38. Go ahead, Coop.
Yep. Braden Smith, awesome. I think this was a really great second round pick. My problem is that they traded Cam Jones, who I know was bad and got hurt, but I like Cam Jones. Maybe you could have had both, and it could have been cool. But I don't know. Braden Smith is I mean, I guess he's the newer, shinier toy, and he does think, I think, fit what the Pacers want, which is someone who can pretend to do a Tyrese Halliburton impersonation when he goes down, while also kind of being tough in that TJ McConnell role, but he can make a lot of the same passes Halliburton can. He's really interesting. I think it's a great one. I'll say B plus just because I wish they still had Cam Jones because I think they could play together.
Yeah, I'm gonna say A. This was my last guy with the first round grade. I think this is the next TJ McConnell, for whatever that's worth. I was trying to think of a cross racial comparison because I hate the white guy to white guy comps as much as anyone, but I didn't want to spend too much time on it. He got drafted by TJ McConnell's team. I just think in time he'll be TJ McConnell 2.0. I like this pick a lot. It's an A for me. Quickly on these last couple, the Knicks take Jack Cahill at 39 and Tyler Nickel. I'm going to give this a B plus, even though I think Cahill is like objectively awful. Like I don't think he is good at basketball. Tyler Nickel I like quite a bit, and I think is a great pick. Really good team defender who makes shots at a really high level off hard movement. Who is also good side, like can probably actually play the three in the league. So I'm going to give this a B plus, even though I don't think Cahill's a guy. Isaiah Nelson at 51. This is a C. He's fine. I don't have any thoughts one way or the other. Just old. I can see a path for him, but I thought he's pretty raw for someone who's old. And then Jerome Pierre, I didn't get to. Crazy athlete, but the Pelicans take him, and I'm not sure what their plans are. Didn't really pop for me in the couple games that I saw teams play against SMU, and so I'm not crazy in on him. That's all we got. Coop, any final thoughts on this draft as we wrap this up?
Yeah, what a fun draft, and what a good draft, right? Like most of my grades were B's and A's. Like teams drafted good players, and teams got better for the most part. And I'm really excited to see these guards specifically in the league. Like very easily the best guard draft we've ever scouted. Arguably has the most depth at the top of any draft we've ever scouted. This is super fun. This whole year was super fun. And it's just so exciting. It's so exciting to be done, but then also we're starting up next season, starting up the off season. Just thanks so much to everyone who was here along for the ride. We really appreciate you guys. Appreciate every single comment, every single like, every single view. You're all the best. I try to respond to every single comment we get. I've been bad the last few days because I got back from Europe and died. But I really appreciate every single one of you. And hopefully we'll see you again over the summer and next cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. Stay tuned for some off-season content. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. We're definitely going to talk Summer League. We're definitely going to do some, rookie predictions. I think we'll probably do an under 23, best in the league under 23. Probably do some redrafts. We definitely got to get to 2018. I probably want to do 2018 through 2022. If we're getting much past 2022 for redrafts, I think we're probably pushing it pretty early into their career. But I think it's fun to go back and look, and obviously starting to get into some drafts that we did. And then, we just want to stick it out. So life update, I'm not coaching college this year. I'm going back to school, which is going to suck in some ways, but it is going to give me more time for this. And I really enjoyed this cycle. I thought this was a little bit back to grassroots, kind of just nose to the grindstone work. To be honest, last year I think was kind of a mess. Looking at my board, it's like some of these evaluations I'm so proud of, and then I'm just like, what the fuck was I doing for half of them? And so that's life, like that's draft, right? Like when this isn't our full-time job, sometimes you're going to be inconsistent in your decision making. But I really enjoyed getting back to just doing the top guys and trying to get them right and not spending a ton of time on the 250th dude on my board or whatever. I just think this was a really fun draft. This was a fun cycle to be doing, even though we missed Stone. And I'm excited for what the offseason might bring. I can't promise you guys a consistent schedule yet, though I think Coop and I will probably talk, and we'll try to get you something consistent, partially because to win the YouTube algorithm game, you kind of need consistent uploads. But stay tuned. This 2027 draft is
kind of fascinating early on, in that there is no obvious top guy right now. I say this as someone who I got to see Tyron Stokes multiple times in person this last year. Nothing about his game screams number one overall pick. Now he was playing public high school basketball, but still, like, I never watched him and was like, oh, obviously for sure number one overall pick. And I say that as someone who watched Paolo in person and was like, oh yeah, that's the best player in the world as far as I was concerned when I was 17 playing against a 16-year-old Paolo. Like this 2027 draft is super interesting. But we appreciate you guys following along in the 2026 draft. Leave a comment below. Let us know what you think about these grades, how dumb we are for not loving Darius Acuff at 7 to the Kings. But this has been an awesome cycle. Please give us a like, rating, review if you're listening to this as a podcast. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, leave a comment. Stay tuned for a lot of fun off-season content coming up, including some exciting summer league content coming up next. This has been the Upside Swings NBA Draft Podcast. We hope we hit our ceiling. Thank you.